human music, the dying wails of a broken species, and you will perform it for my court as a final humiliation.
Guards dragged the human conductor forward. Christine stood in chains, tunic rumpled, gaze steady.
Teach my court orchestra a piece of your primitive music. Refuse, and your world suffers. Accept, and live to see the joke.
I'll conduct, but your ears hear notes, your hearts cannot. That is the difference.
The court chuckled. High Chancellor Korath stepped forward, red scales rigid with contempt.
Emperor, this creature speaks of hearts? Let her fail and be executed. Purge this nonsense.
Patience. I want every Vothari to hear how hollow human art is. Then we decide her fate.
Christine offered no plea. Her stillness gave the Emperor a flicker of unease.
They've never heard a minor chord. They don't know what's coming.
The order was given. The orchestra would learn an Earth symphony, and the Empire would mock it at the grand banquet. They led her to the rehearsal hall. Ranks of Vothari musicians sat with alien instruments, eyes cold with discipline.
I am Christine Vance. You will learn a piece called Adagio for strings. It is not a march. It is a lament.
Four-eyed faces stared back. No one asked a question. Silence as empty as their repertoire.
A lament means sorrow, loss. Have you ever lost someone?
The Vothari exchanged glances. Their music celebrated conquest alone. Grief was an alien tongue. She raised her baton. They played the opening bars, technically flawless, rhythm precise, emotionally barren.
Stop. You played the notes, but not the pain. Where is the weight? The ache?
A young musician asked, "What is ache?"
It is what remains when joy is stripped away. Now play the passage again, and let silence speak.
They tried again, the same hollow perfection. Christine lowered her baton, a tremor in her hand. In her Spartan guest quarters, Christine sat in the dim light and accessed the Vothari Imperial Music Archive. She laid human scores beside Vothari compositions. The contrast cut deeper than any blade. Vothari music knew only major keys, triumphal marches, and victory anthems. Not a single minor chord existed in the entire archive.
They didn't just forget how to grieve. They destroyed the very tools for it.
In the throne room, High Chancellor Korath stood rigid before the Emperor, his red scales dark with displeasure.
This human creature is a contaminant. Her presence unsettles the court. Cancel the spectacle before damage spreads.
I remember her words. I want to see if her music carries any weight. The performance will proceed.
Korath's jaw tightened, but he bowed and withdrew. The Emperor's fingers drummed once on the armrest.
The Adagio is the key. If one Vothari heart opens tonight, that's enough.
She marked the score with emotional annotations, phrases for longing, rests for silence, preparing to teach grief to a race that had amputated it. The next rehearsal began tense. Christine stopped them after 3 bars.
You are still playing shapes. This music needs breath between the notes, like a sob caught in a throat.
A young musician twitched his tail and set down his bow. He asked, "Conductor Vance, what emotion are we to copy?"
Not copy, remember. Every living thing knows loss. You've just been taught not to name it.
She called up a recording from her personal data cube. The first mournful chords of the Adagio for strings enveloped the silent hall. The Vothari musicians listened rigidly. A few closed all 4 eyes. Then they played it again. This time, the music held a ghost of weight, a single off-world note, bent by a trembling claw, that almost ached.
Hold that. Tomorrow, at the banquet, you must let the silence between notes be your argument.
Time was a blade. The grand banquet was one sleep away, and the piece still teetered between hollow and whole. The Emperor could not sleep. He padded barefoot through the cold corridors, robe trailing on stone. A thread of sound leaked from the rehearsal hall. The Adagio, raw and unfinished, he froze.
What is this? A military march would not coil around my spine like a serpent.
He shoved the door inward. The music choked off. Christine turned, baton still raised.
That sound, it is some human weapon. A psychological trick. Confess.
It's not a trick. It's what we do with pain. You've erased sorrow from your world. This is its voice.
The Emperor's throat moved. He said nothing more, simply turned and left. His guards flanked him, confused. He walked back through the empty corridors, but his pace was slower. The music was already inside him.
She is wrong. Victory is the only truth. And yet, why does my chest ache?
He did not cancel the banquet. He did not sleep. He sat in the dark, listening to an echo that had no name. Korath strode into the Emperor's chambers without knocking, red scales bristling.
Rumors fester. The court says your human witch brews a sound that sickens the spirit. Cancel now.
Let them play their dying sounds. I will not hide from a minor chord.
Korath's tail lashed once, but he bowed rigidly and retreated. The Empress stared at nothing. Behind the curtain, Christine gathered the orchestra. Their four-eyed stares were more focused now.
Forget the Emperor. Forget the court. Play the truth we found in the silence, and let it speak.
Instruments settled. The curtain rose on a single spotlight. The banquet hall filled, 1,000 jeweled scales under floating light orbs. Smug anticipation rippled through the guests. The Emperor took his elevated throne, goblet in hand. He wore his coldest smirk, a mask of command. His gaze flicked toward the empty stage. For a heartbeat, the mask slipped. Christine stepped onto the podium, her baton catching the single golden light. The hall exhaled its last snicker. She raised her arms. In the silence before the first downbeat, even the floating orbs seemed to dim. The opening phrase crept out, soft, minor, a question no Vathari had ever asked aloud. Two nobles exchanged a glance, their goblets forgotten. The smirk that had been a weapon was now a shield, and it was cracking. Christine's baton trembled as she drew the crescendo from the strings. Sweat beaded on her temple, but her eyes never closed. A single alien cello bent a note, the same off-world ache from rehearsal, and the air thickened.
This is not the sound of defeat. It is an invitation. To what?
The Emperor's goblet tilted, a thin stream of wine bleeding onto the white cloth. He didn't notice. Across the hall, a courtier pressed a clawed hand to her chest, as though something inside had shifted without permission. The Emperor's smile had vanished entirely. He stared at the human conductor, as if seeing her for the first time. The Adagio entered its final, devastating passage. The sound was no longer outside him, it had become memory.
My brother laughed. Then the silence. Father forbade mourning. We were warriors, not mourners.
His knuckles whitened on the armrest. The Empire had no word for what swelled in his chest. Christine caught the tremor in his jaw. This was not rage. It was something far older. A single tear, clear as glass, formed in the corner of one eye. It traced the scales. Her baton dipped a heartbeat. The orchestra sustained the silence, breathing as one.
Not here, not now. He is the Emperor. Grief is a luxury he cannot permit.
He lifted a hand, wiped the tear, and disguised it as straightening his crown. No one saw. The music ended on a lingering chord, an open wound left to heal. He did not applaud. He stared at his reflection, distorted in the wine upon the tablecloth. For 3 heartbeats, no one breathed. The final note hung in the air like smoke. Vexeris shoved to his feet, the goblet clattering to the floor. He did not address the court. He strode through the silent aisle. Guards scrambled behind him. The court parted like water before a blade. Korath's glare fixed on the human. His claws scraped the table as he stood. Christine lowered her baton. Her arm trembled, but her back remained straight. Murmurs erupted. Some nobles argued. Others simply stared at the empty throne. Korath, hissed a command at the nearest courtiers and stormed toward the side entrance. The musicians filed off, their instruments cradled like sleeping children. The stage grew cold. The emperor's throne on the dais stood empty, the spilled wine a dark stain on the cloth. For a moment, Christine stood alone in the fading light, her shadows stretched long across the stage. In his chambers, Vexaris hurled a crystal sculpture against the wall. The shatter echoed like a scream.
3 centuries of conquest, undone by a minor chord. What kind of emperor weeps?
The door burst open. Korath did not bow.
The human performed psychic warfare. She must be executed before the court recovers its nerve.
Number. The music was not an attack, it was a mirror. I saw my brother. I felt what we buried.
Korath's tail stiffened. The silence was a blade.
You've grown weak, Vexaris. The council will remember this.
Leave me. The music stays. She stays. That is final.
Korath withdrew. The door sealed behind him with a hiss of contempt. Alone, the emperor retrieved a small holographic portrait from a hidden drawer, a young Vothari, frozen in laughter. He stared until the light burned his eyes. Guards came for Christine, not with chains, but a quiet summons. She walked into the emperor's chambers expecting a tribunal. Instead, Vexaris gestured to a low chair. The invitation terrified her more than any threat.
You didn't bring me here to execute me, did you?
Number. I need to understand. How do humans survive this? Wait. How do you carry grief and not break?
We don't carry it alone. We turn it into music, into stories. A lament is a shared breath. It tells the dead they are not forgotten. When we sing a lullaby to a dying parent, we are not giving up. We are saying, your pain is seen.
She paused. The emperor's crown sat discarded on the floor. The galaxy hologram spun, unheeded.
We have no songs for the dead, no rituals for sorrow. We only have victory anthems and silence. My empire is emotionally mute. We have conquered everything except our own hearts.
For the first time, the emperor looked at her not as a prisoner, but as a teacher. The silence between them was the beginning of a question he had never dared ask. Christine's footsteps faded. Vexaris remained motionless until the first light of dawn bled through the crystal windows.
A conqueror who cannot mourn is a hollow monument to nothing.
He activated a holographic tablet. The blank document shimmered, waiting. The first lines he wrote were simple. I, Emperor Vexaris, abdicate the throne and establish the Academy of the Arts. He continued, this institution shall teach sorrow, loss, and the full emotional spectrum our empire suppressed. He paused. The crown where he had cast it on the floor caught the growing light.
This weight has been a lie. It protected nothing but emptiness.
He lifted the crown and set it deliberately on the far table, out of his sight, with a press of his thumb. The decree sealed, a genetic spiral confirming his intent. Beside the tablet, his brother's hologram still laughed. Vexaris whispered something only the dead could hear. Summons pierced the palace. Advisors and generals hurried through the corridors, their confusion a tangible fog. The emperor stood before them, crown absent. In his hand, a single holographic sheet. Korath shouldered through the crowd, red scales blazing. He sensed the kill before the words came.
I am abolishing the office of emperor. I will found an Academy of the Arts, funded by my personal treasury. The decree is sealed.
You mean to destroy the empire because a human lullaby made you cry. This is madness.
The empire was already dead. It had no songs for the fallen, no words for grief. I am giving us permission to feel.
The council erupted. Some shouted treason. Others stood frozen, mouths agape.
The council will not recognize this. You have no heir. This is a power vacuum you will drown in.
Then let the vacuum be filled by those who can weep. The academy will be built. That is my final command as emperor.
Without waiting for dismissal, he turned and walked out, leaving the council in splintered silence. The palace garden was a rare silence. Christine sat by the reflecting pool, watching purple leaves drift across her own fractured reflection. Vexaris appeared beside the bench, wearing a plain gray robe. His crown was nowhere in sight.
I have a proposal that will shape my people's future. The Academy of the Arts needs a founding director. I want you.
Why me? I was dragged here in chains. You meant to mock everything I am.
Because you showed us what we lacked. One piece of music gave me back my brother, if only for a moment. You understand grief.
One season. I'll stay to plant the foundation. Then I return to Earth. I cannot give my whole life to healing your empire.
One season is more than centuries of conquest ever gave us. Agreed.
They did not shake hands. No formal contract was signed. The pact sealed itself in the space between them.
Thank you, Christine.
A breeze scattered petals across the bench. Somewhere beyond these walls, a melody was forming in a mind that had never before been permitted to mourn. The grand square fell silent as Vexaris walked to its center alone. No guards, no advisors, just a gray robe and bare feet.
I remove this crown not in shame, but in reclamation. The Empire has conquered enough worlds. It is time to conquer ourselves.
He lifted the crown with trembling hands. The jewels caught the gray light and seemed to dim.
I establish the Vothari Academy of the Arts, where we will learn what we silenced, grief, loss, and the music of our own hearts.
A tear broke free, tracing the same path as in the banquet hall. But this time, watched by billions, he set the crown at his feet. Its weight hitting stone echoed across the square, like a quiet thunder.
Christine Vance, please stand.
Christine rose from the assembly of dignitaries. She did not smile, but her eyes held a fierce pride. The crowd remained silent. A few, very few, bowed their heads. The rest stood frozen, a civilization learning to breathe. High above, the gray clouds parted. A sliver of golden light fell upon the fallen crown. The academy rose swiftly, its crystal spire piercing the purple sky. Christine walked its halls alone before the first students arrived. 23 Vothari and a handful of other species filed into the lecture hall, their scales washed in curiosity and fear.
This is a major chord. It carries your empire's anthems. Now, the minor. Does anyone know the sound?
No hands rose. She played a G minor. The room leaned back as if struck. A young Vothari near the back raised a trembling claw. Can we try to play your human song? The room held its breath.
Yes, that is exactly what we will do. But first, we must understand the language of grief.
By week's end, half the class had withdrawn. The rest stayed, restless but unwilling to leave.
The seed is fragile, but it is taking root. Now we must water it.
Christine handed out sheet music for the adagio. The first notes of grief were placed into alien hands. Months slipped by. The Academy's halls hummed with tentative new melodies. A young Vothari named Trine received word. Their mother had died in a distant colony. Trine returned to class hollow, but said nothing. Their scales seemed to lose their luster.
Tren has been absent for 3 days. Something is wrong.
Late in the quiet hours, Christine heard faint music from a practice room. Halting, sorrowful, untaught, she pushed the door open. Trin sat alone at a keyboard, eyes closed, playing something that had no name. The melody was raw, wandering through minor keys with a child's jagged honesty. It ached with grief not taught but released.
That is true music.
Christine placed a gentle hand on Trin's shoulder. The young Vothari opened all 4 eyes, tears streaming, and looked up.
The seed has taken root. They are writing their own laments now.
On the final day, the students gathered in the lecture hall. No one spoke. Tren took the first note. The music began, Vothari strings weaving around a human chord progression, a lament and a lullaby entwined.
You have found your minor keys. Now write your own symphonies.
She walked to the shuttle dock, plaque in hand. At the ramp, she turned and waved. The students lifted their claws in silence. A few tears glistened on scales. The ship rose, a white sliver against the purple dusk. Below, the Academy's crystal spire caught the last sun and glowed like a promise.
It's not goodbye. It's a fermata until the next breath.
From the viewport, the Vothari homeworld shrank. Somewhere in that fading city, a requiem was being born. The Academy's crystal spire pierced the purple sky, a solitary light. The music would outlive the ship. Earth's morning light filled her quiet living room. Christine unlatched the suitcase and lifted the plaque. She set the Director Emeritus plaque on the mantel, beside a photo of her own late teacher. Among the mementos, a sealed envelope. Inside, a data crystal and a handwritten note from Trin. She inserted the crystal. The player whirred softly. The requiem began, a full orchestra of Vothari instruments, low and resonant, grieving in a language they were never taught. The music climbed, a lament so pure it hurt, then fell into a quiet acceptance.
Tren wrote this. They all did.
She covered her mouth with one hand, tears slipping through her fingers. The final chord faded. In the silence, she smiled. The Vothari were still learning to grieve. It was going well. A generation later, the Academy's crystal spire pierced the sky like a promise kept. Students from a dozen species now bowed over their instruments, learning the language of grief. A Vothari instructor, once a student of Christine's, led the ensemble with a gentle claw. In the concert hall, Trin conducted a requiem of their own making. 100 musicians bowed to sorrow. The music held no triumph. It was the sound of a people learning to mourn. In a quiet village, a child knelt beside a small string instrument, eyes closed. Her fingers found a minor key, a lullaby for a grandmother who would never wake. An adult paused in the doorway, scales glistening. They did not interrupt. From the capital, the Academy's spire pulsed a gentle blue, a heartbeat for the world below. The Vothari had found their voice. It was soft, but the silence would never return. A courier drone landed at her doorstep, its cargo a slim envelope sealed with Vothari wax. Christine carried it to the window, where the first light of dawn was stretching across the garden. She broke the seal, handwritten script, the graceful loops of Trin's claw, with a translation beneath. The words were simple. We are writing our own laments now. You gave us permission to feel. She read it again, whispering the words. A profound pride swelled in her chest.
They are singing, they are grieving, and it is beautiful.
She lifted her gaze to the window. The sun was fully above the mountains, now gilding the room. Tears brimmed, but her smile was wide and unbroken. She pressed the letter to her lips, folding it carefully. She slid it into the drawer beside the requiem crystal and the Director Emeritus plaque. Then she simply stood there, in the quiet morning, listening to the hum of a world that had learned to feel. Far away on the Vothari homeworld, night fell softly over the capital. Beneath the towers, life moved. Families, merchants, children chasing one another. Sounds drifted upward, not the old war chants, but something softer. The Academy's crystal spire held steady, a quiet anchor in the purple sky. Its light touched the roofs, a gentle reminder that grief had been given a voice. In a small flat, a young Vothari stepped onto a balcony and lifted their face to the spire's light, closing all four eyes. Inside, a familiar melody rose, an old human lullaby now woven into Vothari's sleep. From the bustling capital to the smallest outpost, the night hummed with new music. The spire pulsed once, a quiet heartbeat, and then settled into a steady glow. The Vothari are still learning to grieve. It's going well.